At the end of the day, why this is a good idea, and we now have new information, by the way. A new poll shows the majority of those polled want Pelosi out as House Speaker. Though Democrats' House majority was nearly wiped out in the last month's election, the party appears poised to retain Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi for a fourth two-year stint as Speaker next month. A new Political Morning Consult poll shows most Democrats think she should keep the gavel, but a majority of voters oppose Pelosi staying as Speaker. Only 31% of all voters think Pelosi should be elected as Speaker when the Congress begins, while 56% think she should not. But self-identified Democrats say the first woman House Speaker should stay on by a 20-point margin, 53 to 33. So, overall, she's down. She's underwater. 56% say no. Among Democrats, frankly, I don't really think that's an impressive number. Just 55% of Democrats think she should stay on? 53%. That's not exactly an overwhelming mandate. And like I said, all these people saying we don't have the numbers, what are you looking at? Again, she's only got a 4-seat majority. There's 7 current members strongly for Medicare for all. So what are you looking at? 7 is bigger than 4. These 7 up top have the power to make a demand, even if that demand isn't going to pass right away. The 4 coming in: Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Marie Newman, Mondaire Jones. If there is a God, Nina Turner eventually. It only strengthens that position. So then the argument becomes, well, what's the point, Jordan? Yeah, you could have a, quote, performative vote, but it's not going to pass. Well, here's the point. You don't ultimately get the victory without public fights for many years before that victory. And part of those public fights are, you ready? Performative, but not just for and giggles, to continue to move the Overton window, to continue to widen the support base for the policy you're trying to propose. This goes for gay marriage. This goes for the Voting Rights Act. This goes for DACA, immigration rights, a pathway to citizenship. Many, many things that 10, 15, 20 years ago did not have majority support. But because those activists and those movement leaders kept fighting publicly, and they kept losing publicly, but they kept building the consensus to a boiling point that politicians, it became untenable. It became untenable for politicians to keep saying no. Joe Biden and Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton were put in a position where it was no longer a politically tenable position to be against gay marriage. And if you continue to be against gay marriage, you are risking getting kicked out of Congress. So to me, here's why you do it. Right now, first of all, let's go back to the primaries. And when I have time or when Jen's feeling better, I'll actually get these numbers. When you look at the Democratic primary, even the states that Joe Biden won over Bernie Sanders, Medicare for all had majority support in every single Democratic primary state, including conservative states like South Carolina, Alabama, and Mississippi. So we have that. Number 2, support for Medicare for all has only increased during this pandemic. Number 3, we have primaries. We have 2022 congressional races. What can progressives use as a political weapon to primary corporate Democrats? I don't know. If there's a vote that we could get them on the record voting against universal health care during a deadly pandemic where at this point 320,000 people have died, and by the time there is a vote, probably, unfortunately, way more. I don't know. Would it be possibly a good weapon to have as a political tool to hammer corporate Democrats who vote against it? In television ads, in digital ads, in social media campaigns, who voted against it on the floor? So no, it might not pass right now, but it would be a political tool to use to widen this, to increase this, to get more people in to eventually pass it. This is how politics works. And I think AOC tweeted it or others tweeted it. All right, well, Jordan, the Democrats know it's not going to pass, so a lot of them will just vote yes, knowing it won't pass. Great. It's a win-win whether they vote no or vote yes. Here's why. If you get a lot more votes yes, you have even more of a case. You have even more of a case if a lot of Democrats that you don't think are going to vote yes, then you could say, look, this is only lost by 20 votes, whatever it is. This isn't pie in the sky. This isn't so far from getting passed. We're 20 to 30 votes away if a lot of the Democrats vote for it knowing it won't pass. But even more than that, you could still use that vote, them voting yes for it, against them to primary them, because voting yes is just one step. What have those people who voted yes done after that to make it a reality? To pressure Nancy Pelosi, to pressure President Biden, Chuck Schumer. Who have those people been taking money from since they voted yes? Have they taken money from pharmaceutical companies? Bet you they will. Have they taken money from for-profit healthcare, private hospitals, Wall Street banks that are heavily invested in the for-profit healthcare industry? Because they could vote yes. That doesn't mean we can't hammer them for still being tied at the hip to the for-profit healthcare industry. So, again, all of these people who consider themselves the credentialed progressives, the YouTube hosts, the big Twitter accounts, who are poo-pooing Jimmy and others. And by the way, I'm not saying I am the king or authority on movements. I don't think Jimmy is saying that either. No one is. To me, it's actually anti-progressive to claim, no, this person has no credential. This person is a joke. We shouldn't listen to that person. It's not about the people proposing it. It's about the idea being proposed. And I don't know another element that they're not talking about here. They're saying, no, we agree with the element of let's demand something for your votes for Speaker Pelosi, but Medicare for All is low on the list. Well, tell me when you're going to get a better opportunity, a better moment in history to push single-payer healthcare. Tell me when. You know of another pandemic coming in 5 years? Where hundreds of thousands of people are going to die? Where the survivors who survived COVID, them and their families are going to be left with, if they're lucky, just a few $1,000s in bills from their hospital stays? People are saying, no, let's demand a $15 minimum wage. They've already passed a $15 minimum wage. Biden has already rhetorically said he's for it. And by the way, even if Biden signs a $15 minimum wage, you do realize it's going to be stacked, just like they did in the States. It's not going to be $15 minimum wage next month if it passes. They're going to slowly raise it. It's going to be gradual, because that's what neoliberalism is. You'd be lucky if $15 minimum wage passes and Biden signs it in January. If the federal minimum wage goes up to $15, you'd be lucky if it did that in 3 years. Remember, Bernie got criticized because his Medicare for All policy would be phased in 4 years. That's how these things work. So $15 minimum wage in 3 to 4 years. When all prices have skyrocketed anyway, what's that going to be worth? I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm actually for a $20 minimum wage. I think $15 is insufficient. But the point is, I'm not hearing. I think personally, a lot of these people who are shitting on this idea, if Cenk Uygur was the one who proposed it, if AOC was the one who proposed it, if name your credentialed, approved progressive approved it, they'd be cheering. They'd be all for it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not credentialed enough, or I'm not, cool enough in progressive circles. But I really don't. I haven't heard one, and I'm open to hearing it, but I really haven't heard one take on this in terms of not doing it that really makes sense to me. I just heard kind of the moving of the goalpost and people twisting themselves into human pretzels to continue to explain why this isn't a good idea. But isn't the point of volunteering for the AOCs of the world and the Rashida Tlaibs of the world and the Ro Khannas of the world and all of these people, volunteering your time, volunteering your money, isn't the point to have them actually in Congress fighting? I'm not one who thinks just because they don't agree with me on every single thing, that makes one a sellout. I don't think that way, and I don't think you should. We're not in high school. You're not a sellout because you don't agree with me on everything. But I don't really get the point of them being in here. They're talking about, no, let's fight for committee seats. Let's fight for these logistical things like committee seats. Big deal, with all due respect. The squad could get committee chairmanships. What does it matter if you pass progressive things in your committees and they then go to die if the speaker is Pelosi? Or if the president is Biden, who's not going to sign any of these things? You could pass things out of committee, but that's not the way it works, because ultimately you have to have the House leadership and the Senate leadership sign on to them, and the president. So I think, personally, to wrap it up, this is a great idea because it's a win-win. Yeah, you're probably not going to pass it on the first try, but it helps crystallize the issue and give you, progressives, if you are somebody watching right now, maybe you're thinking of primarying a Democrat, a House Democrat or a Senate Democrat in 2022. Wouldn't you like to be able to use as a political weapon their no vote on Medicare for All during a deadly pandemic where hundreds of thousands of people have died? Wouldn't you think that would be a politically useful weapon? Wouldn't you, even if they voted yes, like I said, be able to say you voted yes, but you're still taking money from these vultures? You haven't actually done anything to pressure Democratic leadership or the president to do this? It's a win-win, folks. And I'm not hearing any valid arguments. My former colleague, Emma, I think, who's with Sam Cedar now, she said, well, Mitch McConnell can't wait for Medicare for All to hit the floor so it loses, and he could use that as a political weapon. Who cares? It has majority support among the American people, and more, it's rising in the polls among Republicans. So who cares what Mitch McConnell thinks or wants? He's on the losing end of public opinion. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.